Okay, so I'm going to be showing you how to take these, the system of equations here, which it's two equations, each containing two variables, the variables being x and y, taking those two equations and putting them into reduced row echelon form. And the way that you do that is, you take the two equations here and put them in a matrix. Looks like that guy. Okay, this line here will make sense in just a moment, but just a quick explanation is it just is like a placeholder for the equal signs there, and once I write everything out, that'll make even more sense. Okay, so you want to write just the numerical values in here of the equations without the variables. So what I mean is x plus 4y equals 3 is going to be written as 1, and then a 4, and then a 3, okay, because 1 comes from 1x, 4 comes from 4y, and 3 from 3. So then you would bring down 2 from 2x, 16 from 16y, and 30, okay? And our end goal here, the reduced row echelon form, is to get this to look like this, with ones going diagonally from the top left to the bottom right and zeros everywhere else. Okay, everywhere else. So let's say you were doing one that was 8 equations and 8 variables. It'd be far bigger than this, but it would still have a line of ones going from the top left diagonally way down to the bottom right there, amongst like a straight shot down, and zeros everywhere else. You'd have lots of zeros in that case. But here we're working with just two equations, two variables, so we're gonna have 1, 0, and 0, 1. And then these question marks here are going to be your answers. So 3 and 30 here, whatever those turn into, at the end, the one in the top here is going to be your x value, and the one in the bottom is going to be the y. So how do we get there? We get there by, well, like I said, this needs to be a 1 here. We already have a 1. Pretty lucky. Alright, so we can move on. We want to move down, okay? Because you're going to move in a counterclockwise motion. You're going to start here, and then go down to here, and then go over to there, and go up to there. And you would just keep going, and if you were working with something that was 8 variables, 8 equations, you would move like a spiral inside, okay, in that counterclockwise motion. So we already have a 1 in the first spot, so we can move to the 2, and that 2 needs to be a 0. So you need to do row operations, and that's just finding the best way to get this 2 to be a 0. And how can we do that? Well, we can do that by multiplying this 1 by -2 and then adding it to 2, and that would get you 0. So you can write that row operation out as row 1, which top row here, times -2, okay, plus row 2 being the 2. Store it, that's what the arrow means, store it in row 2, okay? So let's do that. We're just going to bring down the first equation because nothing's going to change there. Just bring it right down. So you take 1, which is row 1, times -2, gets you -2, add it to 2, gets you 0. And we're going to move here to the 4, which is also row 1. Remember, we're just talking about anything row 1. You don't want to stick with the 1 and keep applying it to each point. You want to consistently move across to the right. So we're going to take row 1, which is 4, times negative 2, which is negative 8, and add that to our row 2, which is 16. 16 minus 8 is 8, and then we're going to go to the 3 times negative 2, negative 6, add that to 30, 24. Okay, so now we're going to move on to, follow the path, move on to the bottom right spot here, where the 8 is, and that 8 needs to be a 1. So how do we do that? Well, if you look, we have a 0, 8, and 24. So, actually, if you took row 2 here, right, and multiply it times 1/8 and store that in row 2, that would get you a 1. Because very important little side note here, with when you're doing reduced row echelon form, when you're trying to achieve that, you cannot divide. But dividing by 8 in this situation and multiplying by 1/8, which is not an illegal move to do, they get you the same answer. So anytime you want to divide by number, remember you can't do that. Like, you can't write that out in a row operation like this. It's not allowed, but you just multiply it as a fraction, gets you the same answer, and it's all good. So bring it down. Row 2 times 1/8. 0 is going to say 0. 8 is going to turn into 1. 24 is going to turn into 3. Bring down the first equation. Okay, and now we're going to move up and figure out 4. And that 4 needs to be 0. How do we get that? We're going to do a similar kind of move as we did to get rid of the 2, actually. We're going to take row 1, being the 4 here, multiply row 2. Oh, I don't know why I wrote row 1, excuse me. We're going to take row 2, multiply it by negative 4, and then add it to row 1, store it in row 1. So that looks very similar to this one here. Row 1 times negative 2 got the 2 to be 0. So we're doing row 2 times negative 4 and adding it to row 1 to get this 4 to be 0. So we will write it. I'll write it here. Bring it up here. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to take row 1 here. Row 2. Oh, what am I saying? Row 2 times negative 4. So 0 times negative 4 is 0. Add it to row 1. Row 1 stays 1 in that spot. And then we're going to take row 2 here, which is 1 times negative 4, which gives you negative 4. Add it to row 1, store it in row 1, gives you 0. We're going to take row 2 again, here in the spot where the 3 is, multiply it by negative 4, which is negative 12. Add it to the 3 here in row 1, which will give you a negative 9. Okay, so bring the second equation over, and there you go. It's in reduced row echelon form, and you can't just leave it there because you have your answer being the x is negative 9 and 3 is what your y is. But if you have time, like say on a test, and you just want to be sure, you can go ahead and plug that in to one of these original equations here. So negative 9 is x plus 4 times 3 equals 3. So you have negative 9 plus 12 equals 3. And is that true? Yes, 3 does equal 3. There you go. And that's how you truly know that this here, negative 9, 3, is your answer.